Introduction to CSS. So last week we went over HTML, which is hypertext markup language. This week we're going to go out over CSS, which is cascade style sheets. Okay, there are three main technologies that we utilize in order to create web pages, or at least that the browser reads. That's HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. JavaScript will be far into the future, so don't worry about that one for now. Okay, so the idea with cascade style sheets is it basically allows you to create rules on how the HTML is displayed. Okay, so it's relatively simple as a language. In some ways, I would say it's even simpler than HTML. However, you can end up with like odd, weird things where it's not reacting the way that you expect it to. HTML almost always looks exactly the way that you write it out, as opposed to CSS where you can have conflicting rules that one's overpowering another one, or you're writing something and it's just not showing up, or it doesn't work on a particular element. Like certain CSS only works on certain other things. So there's a lot of weird things that just sometimes get kind of confusing about it. But the actual syntax of it is relatively simple. So when HTML was originally written, it was written as a way to share scientific documents from one person to another using the internet. Okay, because originally when you would look at the documents that were written, they'd be as though you were writing inside of Notepad, right? So there was no formatting. It was just plain text, monospace, real boring, and kind of honestly difficult to read. It would be, if anyone's familiar with like DOS, when you first put your computer up, it would look like that. So basically a French scientist came up with CSS. And the idea here is that it allows you to format and apply design principles to the HTML. Okay, so it's like a separate language that you layer on top of that language in order for it to give it, like I said, design principles. So a real broad way to look at this is HTML. You use that as your text, your content, right? So text, your written content, your images and videos and audio. So basically all of the content of the site as well as the basic structure of the site. Obviously, we write in HTML first and second and third and fourth. It's going to lay it out in that order. Okay. So for the general structure and the content, that's what HTML is meant to do, and only that. You don't want it to handle. There are ways of making it handle some design elements. You do not want it to do that. CSS is for formatting and design. So what that allows you to do is change the color of the text. So like this is changed by using CSS. There's even less shadow on there. That's by CSS. This little bar thing here that you see, right? That's CSS. The colors, the image here being centered is CSS. The image being linked is HTML. Okay. So the text being white, that's all CSS. So CSS more or less imposes design onto it, while the HTML will just hold that. And then the last language, which I mentioned earlier, is JavaScript, and we'll talk about that later on. But that is for advanced animation and interactive components. It allows you to actually sort of create programmy things into it. Okay, so you can look at that's more or less the difference. It would just be the design itself, and this just adds a little bit of style to it. Okay.